they're pretty conservative. But he's probably, his name is Dick. That's not his legal name. Yes, Hendrick.
All right, welcome everyone to the Board of Directors regular meeting for International Alliance. We will begin with a roll call.
Board Member Stella.
Here.
Board Member Boxell.
Here.
Board Member Figueroa.
Present.
Board Member Venus.
Present.
Board Member Ecker.
Present.
Chairman
Present. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move forward with board comments and announcements. I'll just say thank you everyone for joining us today, and also happy Halloween. Hope everyone has a nice, safe weekend. Are there any other comments or updates from the board? Seeing none, we're going to check in for public comment.
We have one speaker, Daniel Dominguez.
Thanks, Dan.
Madam Chair. We'll take, oh, there we go.
There you are.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Daniel Dominguez. I'm a Oceanside resident, and I am also on the Clean Energy Alliance Citizens Advisory Committee. Though my comments today are strictly my own, and they're not in connection with the advisory committee at all. I'm here to talk about the issue that is facing our country, specifically the suspension of SNAP benefits, and asking the board of directors, I'm not sure if there's already programs to allow this, but to ask them to talk about giving people a grace period on their electric bills. The average SNAP benefit in San Diego County is approximately about $180. The average CA bill is approximately about $140. While it doesn't cover the entirety of what they're losing in SNAP benefits, it goes a long way to help. People should not have to be put in a position where they are trying to decide whether to put food on the table or pay an electric bill. I know the CEA has some programs. Maybe the board of directors can have those programs specifically highlighted so that people know that they exist, like payment programs or deferring payments on their electric bill. And lastly, all of you are all of you are elected leaders of the communities that the CEA serves. The cities, I will be asking the city of Oceanside to do this. The cities should look at maybe having a link or webpage in their city's web pages where people can go and find out the list of nonprofits in their area that are having food distributions, instead of people having to hunt and seek, individually. It should be somewhere where they can click on and it will list the nonprofits that are providing food for people in need, for needy families. And with that, I thank you for the time. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes from 126. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved by Becker, seconded by Nunez. Now we'll move on to a vote.
Board Member Spellich. Board Member Bonneton.
Aye.
Board Member Figueroa.
Aye.
Board Member Nunez.
Yes.
Board Member Becker.
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Yes. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our regular agenda. Just to note that under presentations, SDE&E update is not presenting at this time. We'll move it forward. And we will move forward into the consent calendar. Would I have a motion or any comments on the consent calendar? I'll move the consent calendar. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you so much. We have a motion second on consent. Can we please vote?
Board Member Spellich.
Yes.
Board Member Bonneton.
Aye.
Board Member Figueroa.
Aye.
Board Member Nunez.
Yes.
Board Member Becker.
Yes.
Chair Melendez.
Yes. Thank you. That moves us to new business, starting with a regulatory update. Item 4. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over reports from our CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is the CEO Operational Administrative Update or report. So just to give you an update on our enrollment statistics, you can see here that we've got a total of 295,298 customer accounts being served. You can see the breakdown by city, by product. Obviously, the default product of Impact Plus has the highest enrollment, and we're nearing 1,500 Green Impact 100% renewable customers. So maintaining a strong 93% participation rate as well. Our staff has been very hard at work engaging with our community. We continue to provide outreach efforts and as well as presentations to various groups. I'm not going to go through this whole list, and this just shows you the degree to which our staff is really engaging with our communities, spreading out throughout our member agencies and engaging in a way to make people aware of CEA and what our programs are and what things we have to offer, and answering any questions they have. These are the upcoming events that we're tentatively scheduled for. We're constantly adding to these lists as time goes on, but we've been very busy over the summer, and things are sort of waning as we head into the holidays in terms of the number of events. This shows our overview of our Solar Plus and Battery Bonus programs with the addition of the Connect programs. As a reminder, those are our self-generation incentive program funded programs, both on the Solar Plus Connect side and the Battery Bonus side. You can see the applications are starting to increase on Solar Plus Connect, Battery Bonus Connect, for about 120 applicants, representing applicants from every one of our member agencies, which is also encouraging. Also encouraging is the ability for us, through our partners, to apply for those available SCHIP funds. And this is a breakdown of how those funds have been applied for in each of the two Connect programs, Solar Plus Connect and Battery Bonus Connect. Those applications are in and pending. And right now, the PUC is expected to issue a final decision on the ruling that was determined that there was no need for a demand response program to be eligible. So we expect that decision next month, and we can get these applications going for the benefit of our customers. Our Peak Smart Savers pilot program is still going. We're slowly ticking up the number of applicants. This is a really good way for customers to save money. We had another event called yesterday with the high temperatures, and we are actively seeing how this will play out in the pilot year. We are looking to extend the pilot for another year. We just we haven't had enough event days really to gauge how this might play out over the course of time. But as you may recall, the pilot program is one in which we will run an overview of how much money customers save over the course of the year. If there's a rate protection here, so if a customer would have not saved money, we will reimburse those customers had they not been enrolled. Our feeling is, I mean, we're confident that customers in this program will save money.
I have one quick question on that, if it's okay. So can our residents go to the website to sign up for Peak Smart?
Yes, they can.
That's the process. And when you're on Peak Smart, does that mean every day from 4 to 9 you should conserve, or is it just on the days that you call it?
So let me start by saying everyone should try to conserve between 4 to 9 on a regular basis. But it's not that every day you have to. It's only on the event days. When we call an event and we send it out via social media, when we expect a really demand on the grid through a high heat day, for example, we will call an event, and it's on that event day that there's an adder added to the bill of $1.10 per kilowatt hour between 4 and 9 p.m. So the program customers are expected or encouraged to not use energy or diminish their use between 4 and 9 p.m. to realize those savings of up to 30% the rest of the year on their energy costs.
So it's a little bit different than the time of use program that SDE&E had.
Correct. It's a demand response program wherein we call an event. There's a demand that we see will exceed a certain criteria level that we have. We call the event, and then customers respond by avoiding the use of energy between 4 and 9 p.m. on those days. And we can call 18 of those
Are there
days
lower rates some of the times then?
all of the time, other than those event days. You're up to 30% lower rates, except during the super off-peak time, I believe it is, which is just a small portion of the winter or the spring, April and May, I believe.
Can I ask a question? Follow-up question to that?
Yeah, and Greg, if you could also speak to the reimbursement process a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I sign up, let's say we sign up for the Peak Smart Savers, the only way we can opt in on an event day is if we see it on social media. Is it possible to get like a text notification, email notification?
You do, you get both at this point. We have the text up and running, correct? Yeah, so you get a text and an email notification that the event day is coming ahead of the event day, and that's when you know. So it's a direct, we have a direct access to our customers to let them know.
Do you have a percentage breakdown of Peak Smart residents that have subscribed based on city? Is there certain cities that have more?
This is the list right here.
Oh, this is
By
that, so
city.
this is how many total?
Total.
Okay.
Yeah, and in answer to the chair's question, this is a pilot program. We're evaluating the program at the end of the year to see, okay, did customers save money? And if a customer saved money, great. If a customer did not save money and would have paid less had they not been enrolled, we will reimburse them for the difference of what they paid above what their normal rate would have been.
And then my last question, if there are any other questions, but also let's say keep on this topic because we could get more information to the customers on this program if they don't already have it. But is this frequent? Are we frequently sending out these types of alerts and these events? Are they becoming more frequent in our region?
I would say they're so far been infrequent. We've had a pretty mild year so far with weather, but I believe we've called, 5 events, I believe this year? 4 events. And so we have the ability to call up to 18 for the program. So at this point, I would say they've been infrequent, although we've had a couple in the last month.
Okay. Sorry, I'm actually enrolled in the program. Just like fill in, yeah, so there's, what's that?
You're the one
Yeah, I'm one of the five.
One of the five.
And I did it because I think, for advocating for this, we should know how it works, and that's just how I'm thinking about it. But you do, I received a message, I think it was Tuesday, yes, saying that there is one following day, and then there's an email as well, and it actually says extra $1.10 per kilowatt hour from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. So it even breaks down the extra amount that you're paying. It's been since I think I enrolled 6 months ago. I think there's only been 2 events. So that's just to build in a little bit, give you guys a little bit of perspective as a customer and seeing how it works. But so far, I mean, it's very communicative. You can opt into, I think, text and email, so I have both of them as well, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty simple alert. I'm wondering, Bruce, if we have established marketing materials that we can distribute via our cities that CEA could provide.
Yeah, at this point, we are mostly promoting the program by word of mouth during our engagement efforts. Understanding it's a pilot program, and we're really trying to kind of figure out what kind of savings there are. As you can imagine, with the kinds of savings that can potentially be realized, we're trying to. The more people that enroll, there might be an impact long term. Now, with 23 customers, it's not gonna be a blip on the radar. So we're really trying to manage the aggressive marketing on this program just at first to see what kind of savings we realized. If we did a full blitz marketing effort before knowing what kind of savings are being realized, or conversely, if there is no savings, we'd be advertising or marketing a program that might not have as much benefit as we think.
Do we have an enrollment goal at this time?
Well, there was a similar program prior to SDE&E ceasing that SDE&E ran, and they had about 1,200 of our customers that then became our customers in that program. We're hopeful that we can regain about that number. So that's kind of our target at this point, and that's not a lot of customers, but again, we're waiting to see how this plays out from an overview and a review perspective before we start marketing. Again, something that either provides exceptional benefit, or if it doesn't provide any benefit, again, we got to be cautious about how much we're touting it. If at the end of the year we realize, well, this didn't work out so well.
Thank you for this question.
Thank you. So just to highlight a couple more of our Green Impact Champions, we've added the Carlsbad Unified School District. I'm sure some of you may have heard of that, and that's exciting, representing a large area and a population of over 110,000. And then Sentinel Therapeutics, which is located in Solana Beach, the latest to enroll in the Green Impact Champion. And again, I always like to shout out the member agencies that have taken that step as well: Del Mar, Solana Beach, Carlsbad, and Vista, for doing so. So just to highlight those. We got an early start. I want to thank Anna Alarcon for getting an early start on the Community Advisory Committee application, just so it doesn't sneak up on anyone. As you may recall, each member serves a 2-year term, and they're staggered term. There are 2 members from each city or each agency. So because we're on staggered terms, we have 7 terms expiring at the end of 2025, and each of you will have the ability to appoint that member. We do allow, as per the board's revised CAC guidelines, people who have had 2 consecutive terms to reapply, and so that may be the case here. And as you can see, we're looking at an application deadline period that will end December 22nd, and the appointments will be made at the board meeting in January 26th. Just as a reminder, these are the. Okay, this isn't working. Oops. These are the existing members, or current members rather, and as you can see in the different shades, the shaded memberships are expiring in 2025. Recently, the board adopted Resolution 2025-043, which allowed for the executive officer to adopt and amend administrative policies. And part of that resolution was that we would report the formation or amendment of an administrative policy at the next available board meeting. We have developed, pursuant to this resolution, we're bringing forward this administrative sponsorship policy we developed. We frequently get requests from community groups, NGOs, nonprofits, as well as other entities requesting sponsorship of events or conferences. It's a great way to not only participate in those events, but to get brand recognition and to engage with our member communities, to strengthen those partnerships and provide support to those organizations. And in order to streamline the sponsorship request, we felt strongly that an administrative policy would be of benefit. So this policy CEA 025 does that. And what it also does is that it ensures that funds are appropriately used to provide distinctive customer or community benefit, and that they are fairly distributed among our member agencies. And the policy outlines the administrative requirements through which these requests are vetted, and to determine how best to appropriate these funds. So the policy evaluates sponsorships based on a number of criteria. The extent to which the sponsorship, as I mentioned earlier, will provide a community benefit or provide a community need, that it aligns with our guiding principles, that it has relevancy to energy and sustainability, renewable energy primarily, potential impact on CEA customers and the community, the increased contribution to brand awareness, support for harder to reach communities and communities of concern. And of course, there's a guideline that makes sure that there would be any perceived conflicts of interest or and other financial considerations. The sponsorship requests must be within our budget. We budget approximately $18,000 per year as part of our marketing budget to these kinds of requests. Anything of $2,000 or less can be approved by an authorized manager. Anything above that will require the chief executive authorization. And that's the nuts and bolts of this policy. It's a pretty streamlined policy, about 2 pages, and it really helps us to be able to, again, vet some of these requests, some of which, by the way, we didn't feel complied with this policy and had been, it just helps us to have a policy to point to say, this is why we're denying this request or approving it. So we're looking for any comment you might have, any questions, happy to answer.
Any comments on the administrative sponsorship policy? We reviewed this previously. I'm satisfied with that. Any others?
I just want to highlight, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I think this is really timely. You all have been really active in the community, and I think it's great to see, and the team has been doing a great job being out there, so I'm glad that we get to see this. And I just want to highlight that I'm really glad that you're going to be taking into consideration the more disinvested portions of our cities. And so I'm glad to see that's highlighted.
Thank you. And I'll just make one final comment on the CEO report and the Peak Smart Savers. Thank you, Member Garcia, Vice Chair, for recommending, right, that we all sign up. I did just now sign up, and it was easy, but I did have to put in my account number. So there's, how many steps in the process? I know it makes it harder for people to go and get it done.
Yeah, I think maybe it'd be a good, when you get that SDE&E bill or whatever, maybe that's the time to do it. But as you mentioned, it's very straightforward. I mean, the whole process I think is straightforward, and I recommend everybody on the board sign up because you'll see firsthand what it is that we're.
Yes, as a pilot, we might want to continue to monitor.
And you can check, if agree to the flaws or bugs or issues that it has as well that we could address together.
The further comments will move forward to reports or new business from our regulatory updates, starting with item 4.
Everyone.
Can I just interrupt and Tim Mandel is here remotely to provide this regulatory update. Tim, are you gonna want me to advance the slides for you?
Yes, please, Greg.
Okay,
You might be muted there.
because we can't hear you if you're speaking.
I am unmuted on my end.
Or unmute me right now. Something.
Tim, you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
You can use pretty hard.
Tim, go ahead and try to share with us and see if we can hear you.
All right.
There you are.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Tim Lindell, Keys and Fox. Members and chair, our regulatory update today is going to only cover one proceeding. Greg, would you mind going forward? That is the Energy Resource Recovery Account, or ERRA, forecast case. This is the case in which the PCIA rates, power charge indifference adjustment rates for next year, are being set. Next slide, please. As always, when we talk about PCI rates, it's helpful to just dig a little deeper to understand why things are moving the way that they're moving. And so I always want to start with this slide here, that green circle on the right there, that is your PCIA revenue requirement. It comes from two different pieces that are determined in this case. The first is the forecasted indifference amount. That looks forward to the costs and market value of SDG&E's portfolio in 2026. And the other ingredient is the year-end PABA balance. PABA stands for Portfolio Allocation Balancing Account. That is a true-up of last year's forecasted rates. So there's two ingredients that go into this. One is a forecast that looks forward next year, and the other is an ongoing true-up of last year's forecasted rates with the actual costs and revenues that SDG&E incurs. Next slide, please. All right. So going one level deeper on that top equation, the way you get the indifference amount is you compare SDG&E's costs to its market value. And costs tend to stay the same, except for years in which general rate cases happen. But market value tends to be pretty volatile. And that's what we're seeing this year. There's three components to market value. There's the energy component, which is valued at the energy index. There's the renewable component of renewable energy, which is valued at the RPS adder, RPS being Renewable Portfolio Standard. And capacity is valued at the RA adder, RA standing for Resource Adequacy. So for those that were on the board last year, recall from last year that when the energy index decreased significantly in value, we also had significant increases in the RPS adder and the RA adder, to the point that the market value of their portfolio increased pretty substantially. Because of that, we ended up with a decrease in PCIA rates last year, such that every member agency had negative PCI rates, apart from Solana, which had essentially a zero PCIA rate. This year is different. This year is a kind of perfect storm in the PCIA. All three benchmarks have fallen. So the RPS adder has gone down by a little bit. The energy index went down significantly. And the RA adder, the value of capacity in SDG&E's portfolio, has absolutely cratered. That's good news for procurement. It reflects the fact that Dan can go find energy and capacity and renewable energy credits fairly cheaply in the market, but it's bad news for PCIA rates. With all three of those values going down, the market value of SDG&E's portfolio has gone down significantly, both in terms of looking forward to 2026 and in terms of truing up last year's forecasted rates with the actual values that we're seeing in the market. In addition, you'll recall that we started talking about these circles and PCI rates earlier this year with regard to a rulemaking that the Commission was conducting. In that rulemaking, the Commission revised how the RA adder is calculated. And they applied that revised RA adder retroactively in this proceeding, something that the CCAs felt was illegal and on which we filed an application for rehearing. The retroactive application of that RA adder also brought down the market value of SDG&E's portfolio. The result is large increases in PCI rates. Next slide, please. In fact, if you look at the 2011 vintage, which none of your agencies are 2011, but it's a helpful metric, it's a historically large increase in PCI rates. So for this vintage, the largest increase had been 500% back in 2014. This year's increase is almost double that. PCI rates for this vintage are increasing 941%. Next slide, please. But the impacts are being felt across the board. So if you look at the top row there, the bundled customer rate, and you go to the far right column, you see that the increase is about 3%, 3 cents, 2.9 cents. That is about the same increase that Solana is going to see in vintage 2017. Their increase is about 3.15 cents per kilowatt hour. Carlsbad and Del Mar are in the 2020 vintage. PCI rates for those communities will go up 4 cents. Escondido and San Marcos will go up about 4.5 cents. That's vintage 2022. And then lastly, Oceanside and Vista will go up about 5.1 cents. That's vintage 2023. It's important to keep in mind these rates are going to change twice more between now and when they become effective on January 1st. They'll first change in regards to an SDG&E advice letter that will be filed on November 15th. That will affect the year-end PABA balance by including 2 more months of actuals, September of this year and October of this year. And I'll update you all on those rates in November. We will also see a change when the final decision in this case comes out. And those final decision changes will be made on New Year's Eve, December 31st. One next slide there, Greg, please. So as I said, these are large increases. There are large increases across the board. Essentially, vintages 2011 to 2017 saw about the same increase, right around 3 cents. The later vintages, especially 2021 to 2024, saw larger increases in the PCI rates. The reason for that has to do with what resources are in each of those vintages. And there were large energy storage procurements ordered by the PUC that SDG&E undertook between 2021 and 2023, especially. The capacity value of those storage resources has gone down significantly because the resource adequacy market price benchmark has gone down significantly. Last year, that RAMPB was much higher, and folks with those vintages will recall that their PCI rates decreased pretty substantially last year. And of course, this year, we're seeing the opposite. Next slide, please, Greg. So what's going to happen next in this case? There's still one issue that remains to be litigated and decided by the commission, and that is whether what are called banked renewable energy credits. Those are renewable energy credits that were generated in years prior to 2025, and then were not used by SDG&E and were put into a bank. The question is whether those credits that were generated in 2018 and earlier, credits that SDG&E plans to use to meet its bundled customer compliance requirements this year, could be valued at the RPS MPB. If they're valued at the RPS MPB, the market value of SDG&E's portfolio will increase and PCI rates will go down. This issue is actually a non-issue in this case until the utility filed their opening brief in mid-September. We actually even waived hearings based on representations from SDG&E that there were no disputed issues of fact on this issue in this case. SDG&E then changed course after it was too late for us to cross-examine their witnesses. We have certainly raised these procedural improprieties with the judge and the commission in the case itself. We've worked strenuously to repair the record in the case, and our comments on the October update are going in today in an effort to make sure we have the record that we need to get the decision that we need from the commission. Again, if the judge adopts our position, the PCI rates will go down a little and bundled customer rates will go up a little. The next thing that happens then, those comments went in today. We will get the update on the 15th that I'll talk to you about in November. We will get our proposed decision around Thanksgiving. The commission will decide that decision in mid-December, and then we will see rates in place starting on January 1st. Questions?
Thank you, Tim. Would that be the end of the regulatory update? And we're mostly hoping to focus on PCIA rates today, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that update. It's very concerning news. I know we're all very concerned about how these rates are gonna impact customers. And so, we're gonna see how that impact really comes down, through everybody's monthly bill. But I just wanted to check in with Greg to see if we had an assessment at this time of how these updates are gonna impact people's bill.
Thank you, Chair. We will be giving you an overview about an item number 6. We've added to the agenda for this reason, and I've asked Tim and Bill to stick around as well. So if there's any questions that you might be able to handle that, that'll be the last item on the agenda.
Very good. At this time, are there any other questions for Tim regarding PCIA rates or our case, this process?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question is, as a board, is there anything that you'd recommend or that we could do in order to advocate or do something? Because, we're looking at, you could go back to the table that had the rate increase, that one right there. We're looking at 4 cents for San Marcos and Escondido, and this in Oceanside, I mean, 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That's going to add up very quickly. It's going to be difficult to communicate this, convey this to our constituents. My question is, obviously, how we communicate that to our constituents is one thing, but in terms of a policy, political, or advocacy side, is there anything that we can do?
I appreciate the question, and so we are actively engaged with our, not only Keys and Fox, but through Cal CCA and other CCAs throughout the state. Obviously, this is not dissimilar, by the way, to every IOU in the state, these kind of PCAs, and it was the foremost topic at the board retreat, Cal CCA board retreat in the end of September. So we are looking in a second phase of the PCIA proceeding at what might be done to address some of these concerns. Cal CCA partners are putting together a slew of options that we hope the commission will take seriously in terms of how we can decrease the impact of PCIA on all our customers. There's a variety of different methodologies or options to consider, some of which could be legislative. So to answer your question, if there is a legislative option that we coalesce around, we could very well be asking members of the board individually to contact our state representatives, or as a board adopt a position statement on a particular piece of legislation that might come forward. So that will take a little bit of time to develop those options, but that's how I would see the board and the members of the board being able to effectuate some movement.
I think that would be really great if there is anything, legislative process or advocacy. And if there's any creative ways to look at this at the city level that we can do an initiative, that'd be great. So just trying to be imagined. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Greg, can you go back to what would that timeline look like for us to engage in that advocacy?
Well, we're beginning a new legislative cycle, and so that begins in January. I will say that the conventional wisdom and some of the partners at Cal CCA believe that the kind of legislation we hope for should be a 2-year piece of legislation. We're currently in the middle of a 2-year cycle. That doesn't mean we might not see some legislation come forward in this next cycle. It just all depends on what kinds of options that we as an organization, Cal CCA, and if we believe strongly in it individually, CEA, feel strongly about trying to promote or support. So it could be as early as this legislative cycle in the coming months, at least as legislators start putting forward their pieces of legislation. It could be protracted to the next legislative cycle. We just don't know at this point. The options that Cal CCA are currently looking at are more on the regulatory side. but that doesn't mean that, legislative options are off the table. By everyone's estimation, people are looking at ways we can fix this from all perspectives.
Okay, thank you for that. I would definitely be in support of making sure that we do something proactively as a board or individual reaching out for, at least our assembly members to make sure that we make requests or, at a minimum, let them know how serious this potentially is for our residents, for our customers. So anything that I can do to help with that advocacy, I would definitely want to join in those efforts. And I think getting our legislators, representatives involved would be, I think, really critical. So any direction on that, I would definitely appreciate it.
We appreciate that, and again, it's pretty early in this phase of the proceedings, so these questions will come to light in the coming months, many months potentially.
Yeah, I guess for me, I was wondering what we can do to motivate SDG&E on, those good years, or what is the motivation for them to unload some of those contracts that we need to get rid of to help our PCIA. So I don't know if there, can be legislation about that too, that, we've got to get them motivated to sell the bad contracts or, start coming to an end, with some of these contracts, I guess. That's a question for Tim, or I guess just a comment that.
I appreciate that. I see it being a challenge to negotiate with SDG on that. And until, in regards to advocacy, until we really understand the impact to customer bills, and that's when we're really going to be able to articulate our position and be able to show the impact to our customers. But I think that that's an important question, right? How do we move forward with SDG&E? Do we have any recourse on this with them?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that Tim Lindell highlighted, the final bit of this proceeding and comments that were just made on the regulatory front about bank recs. That's an issue that, again, hopefully we can get some movement on. Moving forward, it's really too early to say. It'd be all speculative, and I want to be careful not to say anything specific about any kind of priorities or strategies that we might have that are not yet developed, especially if there's no consensus, which again, very early stages of all of this. So I plan to keep the board informed, whether in open or closed session if necessary. And at this point, we're taking these comments and they're not new. In fact, we all have this same desire to try to see what can be accomplished.
And any further questions? Just one that came to mind now is, beyond impacting customer rates, how would these PCIA rate increases impact organizationally, right? Any of the costs to our other operations, any impacts internally?
Yeah, so, and Andy can add on to this, what I would say, and Tim highlighted this, interestingly, what's happened with the market price benchmark and the cost of energy and resource adequacy and whatnot has been a benefit to operations to some degree, and that's the irony here, but it doesn't have a dramatic impact on us other than, particularly as we have yet to determine what course of action, if any, we take, and that'll come through discussion on item 6. But we're not seeing a dramatic impact to operational costs, and understanding operational costs. If you take out program budget, which we have not allocated money to, we're well below, we're about 3.5%, 3 to 3.6% of our overall expenditure budget. So we're not seeing operations impacted by this, and our projections for energy sales are still in line with what we've been expecting. The challenge is, of course, how do we provide any relief to our ratepayers? And that's what we'll try to come to you with some ideas at the next meeting, if so directed during item number 6.
Seeing no further comments at this time, we'll take a break from PCIA K and move to item 5, to receive annual audit and financial report. Thank you. Take it away, Andy.
One thing to add on that last, you still here, everyone?
Yeah, oh yeah, we can, yeah, that's not even the house.
All right, great. One thing to add on to what Rick said about the energy costs. We likely will see some savings as a result of the costs going being lower, which is a result of PCIA being higher. However, it's not as direct a relationship because what we do for our energy costs is we try to hedge and buy in advance costs, so and those costs are layered in over the course of the year in order to minimize the risk of volatility in markets, and so we'll see a slower ramp down costs. Although we will end up realizing some cost savings over time because costs are lower, but we still last year they have bought some of the energy we're using today. So well, it isn't as direct relationship. Okay, moving on to the audit. Recommendation that the board receive and file the audited financial statements. We have on the phone Kellen Gilbert, who's a partner with Soren. Soren replaced Sandy and Brinker. They merged as a company. I'll let him talk about how the relationship is, but it's the same audit team. It's their 3rd year as independent auditors for Clean Energy Alliance. The audit was completed on October 15th. Very early for most CCAs, probably one of the earliest in the state. The audit results are a clean opinion and no material weakness. We had one minor thing last year we talked about, you may recall. And I'll let him give the update on that in a few minutes. Wanted to just refresh your memory about what our full year results were. The audit report is a little bit dry and hard to read. But the left column is what our results are or were as and audited. In yellow highlighted is the change in that position of 38.3 million. That was against the budget last year of 33.3 million. So we had a positive year. If you look at the top, revenues actually were almost $8.5 million below the budget. That was not really unexpected when we saw such a mild year in weather. Seen the same thing in the first 2 months of this year as well, with in the July and August timeframe, which is after this budget period, seeing revenues being lower than budget because customer usage is lower. But that was offset last year in energy costs, which is that total cost of goods sold and energy expense line item. And that more than offset the reduction in the shortfall in revenues. Our ending net position was almost 21.4 million. That will enable us to start building reserves. We talked about that at this meeting before. The energy companies providing $350 million of energy costs a year to our customers. Given the volatility in the energy markets, it is standard practice and best practice for CCAs and for all load serving entities like CEA to build up substantial adequate reserves to weather that volatility over time. And if there's no questions on this slide, I'll finish my and at the next page. This is a current outlook for the coming 3 years. The left column is where we just ended at the same change in that position of 38.3 million. And our current forecast over the next 3 years is substantial or decent reserves building up and changing that position, $30 million in current year, $34 million, and then currently forecasted at $71 million. But that would, if that all plays out, and there are hundreds of assumptions that go into all of these projections, all of which will not be right, but hopefully they're close enough. But, and there's, as I mentioned, lots of volatility in the energy market, so predicting, trying to forecast even a few months, much less a few years, is always difficult. But if everything played out, as we currently are forecasting, we would build up base liquidity on hand to about 170 days in the FY 28 years, so that would be June of 2028. And that would allow us to grow reserves to a level that would enable us to get an investment grade credit rating sometime in the next 2+ years, if we continued on this path.
I do have, comments to make, and we can get back to this by funding note of it. I know we talked about the, days free on hand, cash free on hand. And at some point, I do want to discuss the possibility of what that means. I know it means that, you know, we get better ratings, better, favorable rates and everything. But I also want to see what it could potentially mean in terms of reducing the cost to our customers. So everybody knows energy is killing everybody here. So I do want to at least entertain that conversation of what it would mean if we lower the cash on hand, if we lower the how much we potentially save and how much we potentially save in future investments. So I just want to entertain that conversation at some point before.
So a very timely comment, and we're actually going to address exactly that point in Greg's next presentation after we get through Kellen's presentation of the audit, because we anticipated exactly where this will go.
All right, thank you guys for getting to know me.
Kellen, do you want to add anything for Kellen? Go ahead.
Great, great, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So just a brief introduction. My name is Kellen Gilbert. I'm the lead audit partner on the engagement. And also with me today, I don't think she's as a panelist, Alana Rico, who is the audit senior associate who has been on the engagement for the past 3 years. A little bit about myself. I took over for Brett Bradford, who retired a few months ago. I've been working at Pisani & Brinker for over 16 years, formerly Pisani & Brinker, now Soren, for 16 years, mostly in the government space, and I'm currently the lead audit partner on a number of CCAs throughout California. Next slide, please. So as of May 2025, Legacy, Pisani & Brinker combined practices with several other like-sized firms and rebranded as a unified firm, Soren. And this was a strategic merger from our perspective. We really liked the level of local control this allowed us to retain, while also giving us the resources that we felt like we needed to combat some of the upcoming challenges in the industry, such as attracting and retaining top talent and dealing with technology issues such as artificial intelligence. So this was really a win-win for us. Soren is now a top 50 firm. We have, I think it's up to 23 offices throughout the United States. And most importantly for you and for my clients, that there is no changes to our rates. The engagement team, other than to say the retirement of Brett Bradford, there's no changes to your engagement team. The costs, and as previously mentioned, the timing of the services provided are not changing in any way. And as we'll get to with the next slide, we did issue the financial statements extremely early this year. Next slide, please. And As was mentioned, we had a unmodified opinion, which is in our world a clean audit opinion, which says that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, and we had no instances of material weaknesses in internal controls. We did not note any. Next slide, please. So this slide, I think, is probably the most important slide in the presentation, just because I think there is a lot of misconception about the relative roles and responsibilities for a financial statement auditor, or excuse me, a financial statement audit. So I always like to remind the public anytime I'm giving a presentation that management is responsible for the financial statements. They're responsible for all the underlying data contained within the financial statements, and they're responsible for maintaining a system of internal control to ensure the accuracy of those financial statements. We, as the auditor, we are responsible for providing our opinion on whether or not those financial statements are materially accurate. And we do this through what we consider, or what we call, a risk-based audit approach. And this means that we plan our audit procedures based off of our risk determination that we determine during our planning phases. We consider your relative accounting processes, internal controls, staffing experience, things like that. And then once we've determined our procedures, we then do a series of test of year-end balances, analytical procedures, and other auditing techniques to ultimately arrive at our opinion. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about our risk assessment procedures. Again, as I mentioned, we obtain an understanding of the operating characteristics, practices, procedures, documents of your accounting processes, and then we'll perform what we call a walkthrough to make sure that what is documented actually matches with what we're seeing, wanting to make sure that the process that as it's written is actually matching up with what we're seeing take place. We'll then use our industry knowledge as well as professional guidance to complete our risk assessment. And then lastly, we want to review and understand the internal controls surrounding those significant transaction cycles to make sure that they're designed and functioning appropriately. Next slide, please. So this is just a short list. This is not meant to be all-inclusive of some of the significant areas during the audit. Revenue recognition and accounts receivable is always a significant focus on any audit. We want to take a sample of customer billings and match those to underlying supporting documentation and also subsequent receipts of those billings. We look at total cash received during the year and relate that to total revenue to make sure that revenue does not look to be overstated. And then we also want to make sure that revenue recognition throughout the year is consistent and that we're not changing how revenue is being treated throughout the year. Cash is relatively easy to audit, but it's a very important area for any audit because of its importance for operations. We send confirmations directly to third-party financial institutions, which is a high level of audit evidence in our opinion. Accrued cost of electricity and other liabilities. We review subsequent disbursements and trace those back to underlying invoices to make sure that all liabilities and related expenses that should be captured in the current period are correctly recorded, testing the assertion of completeness. And then last but not least, very important, we review the financial statement disclosures. We want to make sure that those are complete and accurate and that there's no missing disclosures and that there's no unnecessary information contained in the disclosures. Next slide, please. And so this is the last slide. This is a list of required communications, just items that professional standards require that we communicate to those charged with governance, which is this board. As discussed in Note 8, there were a number of new Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncements that were adopted during the year, and they did not have a material impact on the financial statements. We didn't propose any material adjustments to the financial statements. We didn't identify any unusual transactions where we weren't sure how to account for, nothing of that nature. And lastly, there were no disagreements on the scope of the audit. Essentially, we were given all the documentation that we requested, and we didn't have any difficulties dealing with management. In fact, we were appreciative of management's assistance to complete the audit as timely and efficiently as we did. We definitely had to work closely with management, including Maher Accountancy, and we greatly appreciate their assistance to get everything completed so timely. And I
Thank
think
you.
that's the, oops, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Helen. I wanted to see if the board had any questions on the report. All right, thank you. Very pleased to hear we've clean reports. It's great confidence in everyone's work here at CEA. Thank you. And thank you, Andy. Finally, we'll go into item 6. And I believe I've neglected to receive public comment. Have I missed any public comment at this time?
There haven't been any public comments on.
Okay, well, I hope the public will engage on this topic. SDE&E's 2026 Energy Resource Recovery Account forecast, October revisions, and CEA rate impacts. I know we have a presentation, and I would love to have the board's full participation in this discussion. Please take it away.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. And before I jump into this, there will be a revisitation of the budget forecast that Andy's went through, and I just wanted to say that while Andy is correct that it's difficult to forecast these numbers, I've been impressed by the accuracy that we've been able to develop, and Andy's being honest about that. But also happy to see that in my years of government experience, it's always good to be conservative but reasonable and realistic. And to see us come in at $5 million to the good in the last fiscal year was encouraging. And much rather see that than the opposite. So thank you, Andy. So this item is picking up on this difficult discussion we had during our regulatory update. We're asking the board to receive this input and provide direction to staff as to how, if at all, we can address the 2026 ERRA forecast, particularly as it pertains to the PCIA rates. And again, reminding everyone, as Tim and Bell mentioned, there are going to be 2 more publications of this in November and December. So these aren't the final numbers, but we can expect them to be fairly close, if not where they are today. So this is a lot of items to give you a background. Tim mentioned a lot of this, that there was a recent decision by the PUC in June that altered and redefined how the methodology of calculating market price benchmarks and in effect PCIA rates. As Tim mentioned, this is kind of wonky, but some of the steps that were taken were to combine the resource adequacy market price benchmark into a single market price benchmark rather than 3 separate ones. There's 3 types of RA, system, flex, and local. And so that had an impact. Looking at 3 years of transaction data for the annual forecasted RA market price benchmark instead of just 1 year. And then 4 years of transaction data for the annual final market price benchmark instead of 2, all of which combined, as Andy mentioned, to kind of create a perfect storm in terms of lowering those market price benchmarks, which created that indifference amount in SDG&E's portfolio and market costs. So as a result of that, the PCIA rates for all of CEA's vintages are now projected to be positive, and I'll get into what they were at the initial filing in May. Positive, not just positive, but pretty highly positive. And they are by vintage year as follows. And this is similar to what Tim had already said and shown you. What this also adds, though, is the initial May filing. So you may recall me advising board members in my briefings that the initial May filing showed 2 of the vintages, 22 and 23, the city of Escondido, San Marcos, Fiscal, and Oceanside, staying negative So not as negative, but negative, and then the other two slightly increasing. Well, that has obviously changed dramatically in the October revisions in the third row there, where you see the numbers that Tim has already presented, where the PCIAs range from 2.2 cents in vintage 23 all the way up to 3.5 cents for vintage 2017. So those changes are quite significant. You can see in the bottom row the change from current to the PCIAs projected for 2026. So quite a bit different than negative. If the October, and this gets to the question that Chair Menendez had, if the October 2026 forecast remains as is, and we look primarily in our joint rate comparison and our discussions revolve around customers that are residential customers. And by and large, that means residents on a TOU DR1 rate, which is by far our highest enrollment for our Clean Impact Plus product. So on average, those customers would receive an increase in their premium currently paid for CEA's higher 50% renewable, 75% carbon-free product, reminding everyone that that premium is to pay for not only a higher renewable content, SDGs currently at 41.4%, but also the program offerings that we can provide and the local representation and local engagement that we provide. So the rates vary by vintage year, and I do want to clarify one thing I just said, that currently we do have one vintage 23, that is Oceanside and Vista, that is enjoying a rate discount under our current rates. If you look online, our joint rate comparison will show you that vintage. The reason for that is that we're required to post the vintage joint rate comparison for the highest enrollment. And those two cities make up our highest enrollment. I'll show you a table later. It's about 42% of our customer accounts are in that vintage. And so the other vintages, the other cities currently pay a slight premium. That is shown here in this chart, the current savings or premium as shown in the top row. That's under our current rates. You can see by vintage year, and we've enumerated the cities that are in each of those vintages. Right now, as I mentioned, the far right, you see a slight savings in cost per month, and then the rest of those are premiums paid on average per month for a residential customer on a TOU DR1 rate. If we did nothing to look at this in terms of standing pat with our rates as of January 1st, and the PCIA forecasted rates stay as is, as in the October update, we could expect those premiums to go up, and that's the bottom row. The premiums that residential customer on average would expect to pay per month for each of those vintage years, ranging from $5.27 to $9.96, almost $10 in the 2017 vintage. So we're asking the board to consider a couple of things. Maintaining our current rates, that's based on the October forecast that just came out. That would mean the rates that CEA customers pay there'd be a premium, as I just showed you in that slide. One thing it does, as shown in the forecast that Andy showed you, that projects no change in rates, right? So the table he showed you in terms of building our reserves, reaching a place where we can achieve credit worthiness and have an investment grade credit rating. Those are part of our strategic plan. In fact, our primary goal of our fiscal sustainability strategic plan is to build reserves, maintain that, build that financial sustainability, and to build reserves sufficient to maintain our sufficient days liquidity on hand and reserves sufficient to achieve that credit worthiness from an investment grade credit rating. That has to be, of course, balanced with our rate competitiveness goal, which is to try to provide competitive rates for our customers as compared to the IOU, while also providing a higher content renewable portfolio, financial and environmental and sustainability benefits, and also achieving the climate action plan goals of our member agencies, all of which are important goals of our strategic plan that this board has adopted in their first ever strategic plan earlier this year. So that's the balancing act we're looking at trying to achieve. The next slide basically talks about that if the board is inclined to direct staff to do so, we can come back at the next board meeting and consider different rate options. And in order to be cost competitive and to decrease that premium, we'd be looking at a rate decrease to achieve that. Keeping in mind, as Tim Lee reported, not only did the forecast in October for SDG&E increase PCIA rates, but it also projects an increase in bundled rates for SDG&E's customers. So if things hold steady, you'll see SDG&E having to increase their rates on their bundled customers. CEA could respond if directed by the board to decrease our rates. Now, of course, what that does is it delays the accrual of reserves or lessens the accrual of reserves and the net position, and it delays the ability for us to seek a credit rating by at least a year, depending. We've done very preliminary rough analyses that shows that it will delay it by at least a year, depending on where we land on proposed rate decrease, if it's the board's direction to do that. As a reminder, I mentioned this is Andy's slide from the audit and the financial projection for the next 3 years. That's something to keep in mind, that if we keep rates where they are, that's what we are hopeful to expect. And again, the disclaimer that Andy gave, that energy markets are volatile, and this is a projection and an estimate only, but that will be delayed. The amount of rate decrease would alter this, and we can provide that information to the board at the next meeting. And then I wanted to, again, make mention of the fact that the breakdown in customer accounts right now, our largest share of customer accounts, 42% roughly, are have been enjoying a rate benefit to SDG&E, while there's been a slight premium for the other 3 vintages. Over time, the 2017 and 2020 vintages have still saved money since inception from being with CEA. The exception being 2022, the Escondido, relatively new vintage. We're still working through, and hopefully over time we can achieve some parity with the incumbent IOU, SDG&E. So this just gives you some background as to where our accounts, the distribution of our accounts are within our member agencies. That concludes the topic, and happy to hear input. And again, we're looking for direction, and happy to come back at the next meeting if so directed.
Thank you, great. Just confirm you still have no comments for public comment.
No public comment on this.
Thank you.
Board comments, would you like to kick us off? Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you. So I do think we really need to lower the rates, even if that does mean that we're going to delay increasing or delay the goal that we have for cash on hand. And the reason why I say that is because if we're looking at $10 more, I mean, maybe not as long, but if we're looking at Escondido, if we're looking at numbers like that, people will opt out. They will downgrade to 50% or switch over to SDG&E. So I think if we don't do that, we lose our competitiveness, and the amount that we potentially have in general from reaching that goal is going to be delayed anyway by having fewer customers. So I do think we really do need to lower the rate, even if it does delay it. My only concern is that if we were to do that, would that, the amount that we would be able to, our increase in preferred rates, let's call it, the amount that we would save on that and what we could potentially invest, would that in the long run cost us more than if we were to be upfront invest? So that's the question I know is very abstract, maybe at this moment, but something that we need to consider. But I do think we need to, otherwise we are going to lose competitiveness to SDG&E, and people will opt out. And the other thing I think we really, and I'm going to revisit this conversation that we had last month, we really need to consider other clean options. Because we need to be able to diversify our portfolio. I cannot emphasize enough, I think we really need to look into new geothermal and hydrogen, just because I think we need to have other options for reducing our costs. But in general, I think we need to start off by reducing our rates, and I believe that very firmly. Thank you.
Other members?
Member Montel?
Yes, thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I have some thoughts, but I'm curious, Mr. Wade, if you, and you can let me know if you wouldn't want to answer, because I know it is a policy call, but I'm just curious what you feel would be the best way to help our customers out, but also maintain the agency's financial interest, because I get that we're trying to strike that appropriate balance. And I hear the vice chair share, his concerns, and I share those concerns around making sure that we can continue to serve everyone in our region appropriately. I'm just trying to figure out what's the best pathway forward. There seems to be a couple of options, but I wonder if there's like a hybrid approach to it, or if you have any suggestions you could share with us.
Thank you for the question. So I guess I would start by saying in the staff report itself, we may have noticed that it was not part of this presentation. We discussed as a board in the past the idea of a PCIA rebate or credit. That is something that specifically was left out because I don't think staff would recommend that. The amount of money that would take, given our limited reserves, would not create the kind of impact to our customers that would be of any benefit, in terms of paying for your buck, so to speak. That's the first way to respond. The second is, yes, I'm very interested as a executive and as a representative of this board, not a representative, but appointed by this board, in fiscal sustainability and financial sustainability. It's one of my highest priorities personally and organizationally. So anything that impacts that long-term or short-term viability has to be very thoughtful. That said, I think we can come back with some options to the board if that's what they'd like to see in terms of a rate reduction. I think we need to be very cautious about how sizable a rate reduction will be. I think at the end of the day, we're likely, even with the rate reduction, to see a slight premium being paid by our customers. And I would only suggest that, we've been frank about that in the presentations I have and that I make to our member agencies and to organizations we meet with. That has been the case for 3 of our vintages. And we haven't seen an outflux, and I'm not disagreeing with Vice Chair Garcia, that we are concerned about the potential for people to look at that competitiveness. So I would suggest that a modest and thoughtful reduction could be in order and could be helpful as long as it doesn't fully compromise our short and long-term economic viability. So we can come back and show you what that looks like, both in terms of the premium or the cost to our customers, as well as what it does to our long-term projections for our budget at the next meeting. And you all can take a look at that and then direct us as to how you'd like us to proceed. Those are some options. We are looking at other options as an organization in terms of economics and benefits to the organization. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we're constantly looking at ways that other CCAs have employed the use of prepayment bonds to prepay advanced contract costs. We don't have a lot of those on hand to do that yet, but we are looking at ways to maybe use that as an option to save our customers money. And so these are things that we're constantly looking at, regardless of where we're landing on rate competitiveness, is how we can be more efficient and economically and financially responsible. So hopefully that answered the question. Again, we've already started some analyses, just to see what might be the feasible for us. And we're happy to bring that back if the board directs us to.
Yeah, thank you. And, obviously as elected representatives, we want to do everything we can to continue to serve folks in our areas. And I appreciate what you shared, Mr. Wade. I think that's a thoughtful approach to being able to think of ways that we can make sure that we're actually really thinking about how costs throughout the state, whether it's, you know, our energy bills or our water bills or something else, it's been impacting folks a lot. So I think just being able to have this conversation around what we can do is important. And I would be interested in seeing maybe at the next meeting what that would look like and what that impact would look like on the agency, and then making a decision based on that. I think I want to make sure we're advocating for our residents in whatever way we can to continue to provide them, obviously clean energy, but at the same time, something that they can still continue to afford. Because it is something, yes, like right now, it may not seem like a lot, but it is a lot for many families. So I just want to make sure we're doing everything possible. So I agree with the vice chair. And then of course, love the sentiments that you shared, Mr. Wade, around being able to see something at our next meeting so we can make a better informed decision. Thank you.
Yeah, I would love to see that come back to us too as well, but I feel like we don't really know about the competitive rates yet, because remember that SDG customers, they pay us a PCIA charge as well, right? And they also, you mentioned that their rates are gonna go up, so we still might be in a pretty good position, you know, as compared to them, so I don't see why I think we should have a little bit more information as to what their rates are gonna be, and before we go moving ours too drastically, I guess, is what I feel. But I would love to see those, that comparison as well, to come back to us at a later meeting.
Thank you, Member. Good items, discussion.
I had a few questions for Greg. We have obviously an obligation to our customers for competitive rates. We also have an obligation to our customers for a sustainable organization. We would all love to be able to reduce rates. My concern is if we do so at this time, we put a future board, a future customer base of CEA in a position where they're not getting the same competitive rates because we don't have the credit ratings that we want to have. So I think there's some pivotal information that we need to get before we move forward with any type of rate increase. And I think you spoke to it a bit, Vice Chair. But that's going to look like getting an analysis on if it's worth delaying our credit goals to save customers, right? So really do an assessment of, will $5 to $10 increase to our customers result in a customer drop off, or we're really losing income because we're losing customers, and then that's bad for everybody? Or will a 1 year delay and a retention of customers be of a higher value to us? So from what staff is saying, it sounds like any amount of increase that's reasonable and sustainable might not even get us into a position where the customer is noticing a large difference, right? So I would really love to venture into that question. That $5 to $10 amount of an increase outside of our control. And I'll also just say, I asked Greg this before, SDG&E doesn't lower their rates when they have PCIA rate increases. Our obligation, we already express a greater sense of obligation to our customers than our competitors. And I think that there's a way for us to provide relief to our customers while not getting into a precedent of reducing rates. I think members of the board have discussed this in the past when we talk about programs, maybe providing some sort of CEA customer relief credit, right? A short-term credit or bonus. And when you get your SDG&E bill, your CEA bill, you'll see, you know, state rebates and other initiatives. And I don't think CEA has ever ventured into putting that on our bill. You know, if we could offer some relief to people, that would really help with customer retention. Even if we can't in the long term reduce rates because we have credit goals, can we put some sort of relief on people's bill using some of the, you know, we've had some good luck this past year. We do have some better financial standings than we were hoping for. But of course, this is not good news for our customers. And I would love to be able to deliver a rate decrease. My goal is to deliver a rate decrease over time by ensuring that our credit goals are accomplished and some of the long-term planning that we're doing as a board, that we're able to get to where we want to go. So I would be more favorable to some sort of bonus or credit on the bill. And if we do venture into a rate decrease at this time, there's some really serious discussions we have to have about what customer retention versus delays to our credit goal, which one's going to have the hardest hitting impact on the organization. So those are the questions that I'm going into it with. But I also appreciate, Greg, you know, you're asking for us to consider, you know, maybe there's a little bit of a ramp up. We still have some information that we're going to be getting from SDG&E and their rates. So it's really good that we're having this conversation now. So I understand your position, Vice Chair. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, and I agree essentially with everything you just said. And which is why I'm not sure if I emphasized earlier, you know, when I said, does the delay of that credit rating, increase that credit rating, does that affect our long-term potential savings through investments that we could potentially make? So I do think at least it's a conversation. To your point, I think we need a deeper analysis, but I think we do need to at least entertain. I like the bonus for credit idea, and also we need to also look at the potential of the rate decrease, and at least look at the numbers, look at the analysis, see what numbers come back, and if what we could potentially look at. I just don't want us to dismiss the idea of a rate decrease outright for the goal of hitting that, you know, credit rating. I think we need to at least look at it, talk about it.
Absolutely. I'll just add one more comment that when I first started this item, you know, as we all have briefed with Greg, my first instinct was maybe some, you know, to take no action. I can't stand for that. I really do think we should take some action. And I think we're coming around the table on this. Any further comments, Member Nunez, Member Figueroa?
No, I'm in support of what's been discussed and what, you know, I think the additional information and additional briefing would be really helpful.
Same thing, I agree with the Vice Chair, I also agree with Chair, and I had this conversation with our CEO as well when we were getting more information to allow the board to make a concrete decision based off the analysis that's provided to us. There's just, we hear rate increases here, but there's also rate increases happening in other parts, whether it's water, or clean other areas. And we all know when it comes to our working families or our seniors, they're the ones that feel it the hardest. And so it's $3 here, it's $4 there, $5 there. And so the more information we have, I think the better informed decision we can make as a board.
I appreciate that from all members, and sounds like we kind of get together a package, right, to respond to this. I think consensus building, finding and other initiatives that help reduce costs, right, for some of our low-income families and working families that are struggling. That one thing the Vice Chair mentioned is the concern about opting down. I would encourage people to opt down. Right, stay with CEA, but opt down and get that energy portfolio in a place that's right for your family and your household, right? We don't always need to be doing 100%. Sometimes we can bring in that 50% or less renewable, so I'm okay with that. And then, Greg, we didn't have a staff recommendation on the board related to any type of bonus or credit. Would you be able, we're going to be bringing back some more information on rate increases, SDG&E's rates, comparables, and our long-term credit goals. But what about a bonus program?
Yeah, I think I did try to address that in terms of those kinds of programs with the limited amount of reserves we have, having any kind of meaningful impact to a ratepayer would be difficult at best. There's also logistical, issues that we have to work through with our billing counterparty or billing consultant, Calpine, to make sure that that's not an easy thing to do administratively or functionally. We can certainly come back at the next meeting with what that might look like. But again, the amount of money that it would take to have some sort of meaningful credit or PCI or rebate, you would call it that, it would take tens of millions of dollars to have a meaningful impact. I was already going to offer Andy or Tim if they had anything to add to the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate
We
that.
concluded to do that, Andy, if you wanted to address that.
Yeah. Son? So Greg and I have had brief discussions about rebate as well. And in my prior role of CFO of Municipal Clean Energy for a number of years, we looked at this as too, especially because I was there when COVID hit. We had some of the same concerns. PCIAs were also very high. The problem with giving a credit relative to PCIA, just off the top of my head, and I gave the same top of my head back the envelope analysis for Greg, is that if you give a $10 million credit based upon usage, 60% of that credit goes to commercial customers. So $10 million, 40% goes to residential, it's $4 million. There's 260,000 customers, and it ends up being a $15 credit on average for customers. And for those, if it's based on usage, it ends up being less than that average for low income or multifamily dwellings, because they don't use as much on average as 260,000 customers. One of the other alternatives, just to throw out, and I was discussing with Greg, is when I was with PCE, excuse me, when COVID hit, we did a credit just for care and fair customers. And that might address some of the concerns of the board that for low income families, it was a way to make a cutoff that wasn't usage based or other, but it was income based, and that number of care and fair customers is a much lower number than the broad number of residential customers, and goes a lot farther even with less money. So, and the amount of credit we were able to do for, in that case, about 20,000 customers, which in CEA, I don't know how many care and fair customers there are, but it's relative, roughly the same size overall. So it might be similar, but the credit ended up being $200 to $250 a family. So we haven't discussed it. Hopefully I didn't throw him off by even throwing it out as an alternative, but we can look at things like that as well, and I think it went a long ways. I think it was well received. But we can look at similar kind of things.
I appreciate that, especially, we heard from a member of the public. Oh, thank you, Tim, if you could also share with us the impact of the credit.
Sorry, I was just saying, I realized I was off mute, and I was just saying yeah to what you and Andy had just discussed there. The only thing I would have added, based on the invitation I just got to see if I had anything to add, was I think the intelligent people in the room have already put forward all the good ideas that I had on how to address this, and I'm happy to help move forward the conversation in whatever way on what the right solution is. The second thing I want to say is just the fact that this conversation is taking place in public, and that the different difficult choices this board faces, it just is such a strong testament for community choice aggregation. Because if this was an investor-owned utility, this conversation would be made behind closed doors, and you would have no insight into it. And the tough choices that are being faced, the public deserves to see this conversation take place. And I'm really happy to see it. And it really encourages me and makes me happy that community choice aggregation exists. And I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Tim. That's a great reminder. I just wanted to reflect on a member of the public, Dan, for his comments earlier about the impacts lack of federal funds being made available to families for basic needs. So, you know, if we're in a position to respond to our own, you know, increases, right, and try to balance those, I think a demographics-based, income-based credit would be my favorite solution. I don't know if any of the other board members would like to see that information come back. But we will certainly have information come back on, rate increases, or decreases, as well as, our credit impacts, and I would ask that a credit come back as well, some sort of relief program. Any further discussion? No? Awesome. Anything further, Greg, that
No,
you have clear direction?
yep, thank you.
Okay, well, that's our final item. With that, we are going to adjourn. The next item will be on November 20th, and I believe we will be exiting into closed session. Johanna.
Real quick, I'm sorry, is there a request for future agenda items?
Oh, yes, please, we love to hear this.
Yeah. I would be interested in maybe sometime next year, if, going off the conversation that we had last month regarding different options, I would like to see if there are third parties or providers or something that could come and speak to the board about different options, clean energy options that we haven't explored yet, but that we don't. You are all experts, the staff is great, but somebody that works directly in the industry, I want to see if there's ways that we can get experts in here that provide other options for us.
Yes, I am working on one option related to lithium development, and we'll definitely be exploring more, but you know, we are going to be receiving information from all over, and if any board member wants to schedule an expert that they identify, you're welcome to. I think that those types of presentations are really valuable. So,
I just wanted to report that for the prior board meeting, direction, a request was made to have some more information on nuclear energy come back, so we are working at it on the speaker to address that. And we can certainly look at other options.
awesome. And moving with into closed session.
Thank you, Chair. Before you is one item, and that is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to government code section 54957, the CEO. It is not anticipated that there will be an actual item for that. If you could please adjourn that would be fine. Thank you. Oh, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on a special closed session? Seeing none, Chair.
All right, we are adjourned into closed session.